Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons, and love are told. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, share with your friends, and subscribe. I woke up that morning with a heart full of joy, convinced that my second wedding anniversary would be everything I had dreamed of. My name is Lillian, and for 2 years I had been married to Anthony, a man I once believed was my forever. I had gone to bed the night before thinking of little surprises, breakfast in bed, a kiss that lingered, maybe even a small gift that showed he still saw me the way he once did. Instead, when I rolled over to kiss him, I was met with coldness. He lay stiff, his back turned to me, as if the sound of my breathing annoyed him. "Good morning, love," I whispered, trying to bridge the distance. He only muttered something about being late for work and shuffled into the bathroom without meeting my eyes. My chest tightened, but I brushed it off, convincing myself that stress was weighing him down. Still, a small voice inside me wondered why today, of all days, he couldn't even manage a smile. I tried to distract myself by throwing my energy into the day. I decorated the living room with soft candles and white roses, his favorite. I ordered his favorite cake from the bakery down the street, the same one we had on our wedding day. I even picked out the dress he once called the dress that stole his breath. As I worked, I told myself he would come home, see the effort, and the man I loved would return. But signs of distance had been creeping in long before today. A week earlier, while gathering laundry, I had noticed a bill folded deep inside Anthony's work trousers. It wasn't for our shared phone plan, but for another line I didn't know existed. The calls and messages stretched late into the night, all to a single unknown number. When I asked him about it, he brushed it off, saying it was a work phone his boss had given him. Yet something in his tone, too defensive, too quick, kept gnawing at me. I told myself not to overthink, but the universe had its way of unraveling truths. Just a few days before the anniversary, I met a woman named Marissa. She introduced herself casually when I stopped by Anthony's office to surprise him with lunch. She leaned on his desk as if she owned the space, her lips curved into a smirk I couldn't quite decipher. "So you're Lillian," she said, stretching my name out slowly. "Anthony has told me so much about you." Her words dripped with something that wasn't admiration, and the way her hand lingered near his papers made my stomach twist. That night at dinner with his parents, his mother, Clarice, had let her fork clink a little too loudly against her plate before saying, "2 years and still no grandchildren. Time doesn't wait for anyone, Lillian." The words were meant to sting, and they did. My cheeks burned, but Anthony just kept chewing, not once speaking up for me. His father, Leonard, nodded in silent agreement, his disapproving eyes fixed on me like I was an investment that had failed to deliver returns. I swallowed my pride and smiled through the evening, but deep inside cracks were forming. I began to wonder if love was enough when every meal turned into a quiet judgment of my worth. Still, I told myself that tonight, the anniversary night, would be different. We would eat, laugh, and maybe even talk about our future without the shadow of children hanging over us. When Anthony returned home that evening, he barely glanced at the decorations I had so carefully arranged. His shirt smelled faintly of perfume, not mine. He loosened his tie and muttered, "We should get going. My parents have prepared something for us." My heart sank. I had imagined us celebrating here, just the two of us. Instead, I found myself forced into another dinner hosted by the very people who had made it their mission to remind me of what I hadn't given them. I slipped on my dress anyway, forcing a smile into the mirror. "Hold it together, Lillian," I whispered to myself. "You can't fall apart before the night even begins." The ride to his parents' house was suffocating. He scrolled through his phone, the screen's glow lighting up his face, while I stared out the window, rehearsing how I would respond if his mother brought up children again. The city lights blurred past me, each one a reminder of how fast my life had changed. 2 years ago we rode down these same roads laughing, hands intertwined, dreaming about forever. Now silence stretched between us like an endless highway. When we arrived, the house was buzzing with guests. Too many guests for what I thought would be a family dinner. Familiar faces from Anthony's workplace, distant relatives I hadn't seen since the wedding, even neighbors who rarely spoke to us. My confusion deepened, but I pasted on a polite smile, hugging and greeting as expected. The atmosphere felt charged, like everyone was waiting for something, but I couldn't place what. As I walked through the room, my Aunt Iris, who had always been my quiet supporter, squeezed my hand. "Stay strong tonight," she whispered, her eyes glimmering with something that unsettled me. I wanted to ask her what she meant, but before I could, Anthony pulled me toward his parents' grand dining table. He sat beside me, but never once reached for my hand. He didn't compliment my dress. He didn't even look at me. Instead, he laughed too easily at Marissa's jokes, who shockingly was also present. The sight of her among his family made my skin crawl, but I kept my composure, sipping water to keep my trembling hands steady. Dinner began with polite chatter, but underneath, I sensed whispers and stolen glances directed at me. Every time I looked up, someone quickly averted their eyes. The tension hung heavier than the chandelier above us. I pushed food around my plate, too unsettled to eat, but determined not to show weakness. As the night stretched on, I couldn't help but feel the storm building. My instincts screamed that this wasn't just an anniversary dinner. Something larger, something darker, was waiting behind their polite smiles. And though I didn't yet know what it was, I could feel my heart bracing itself for the blow. The air in Leonard and Clarice's dining room felt suffocating, heavy with secrets that pressed against my chest. The laughter around the table sounded rehearsed, a performance masking something no one wanted to say out loud yet. I sat there, pretending to smile, all the while watching Anthony avoid me as if I were a stranger. Each time I glanced at him, he either shifted in his chair or turned to Marissa, who seemed far too comfortable at this so-called anniversary dinner. The meal dragged on with forced small talk. Guests complimented Clarice's cooking, praised Leonard's business ventures, and chuckled at Anthony's shallow jokes. Yet every glance toward me carried a subtle edge of pity. I caught Iris's eyes once more. She gave me the faintest shake of her head, urging me to stay calm. My nerves buzzed like static under my skin. When dessert was cleared away, Clarice tapped her glass with a spoon, the sharp clink pulling everyone's attention. "Now," she said with an air of rehearsed excitement, "it's time for tonight's surprise." My heart lifted slightly. Maybe, just maybe, I had misjudged. Perhaps they planned something thoughtful, something kind that would make me feel like part of this family again. I clasped my hands in my lap, waiting. But then Leonard stood, his face stern and unyielding. "Lillian," he began, his voice carrying the weight of judgment. "In our family, marriage has always had a purpose, continuity, legacy, heirs. After 2 years, you have not fulfilled this responsibility." The words cut into me like shards of glass. My ears rang and for a moment I couldn't breathe. A murmur rippled through the guests, as though they were all in on some cruel play. I looked to Anthony, begging him with my eyes to defend me, to say something, anything. Instead, he kept his gaze fixed on the table. Leonard continued, pulling an envelope from his pocket. "Tonight we cannot ignore this failure. We cannot allow our son's life to stagnate because of your inadequacy. Therefore, we believe it is best for you and Anthony to part ways." He placed the envelope in front of me. My hand shook as I opened it, my vision blurring as I read the words, "Divorce papers." A hush fell over the room, broken only by Clarice's smug smile. "We believe this is for the best, dear," she said softly, though her tone carried triumph. "Anthony deserves a future with children, a legacy to carry forward." I swallowed hard, fighting tears. My voice trembled as I whispered, "You planned this tonight of all nights?" Before I could process further, Clarice gestured toward Marissa, who stood gracefully, resting her hand on her stomach. My stomach churned as realization dawned. "Allow me to introduce the woman who will carry our family's legacy," Clarice announced. "Marissa, Anthony's fiancée, and the mother of his child." Gasps filled the room. My heart splintered, each piece cutting deeper than the last. Anthony finally looked at me, but not with regret, only with cold detachment. "It's true," he said quietly. "Marissa is pregnant. We thought it best to move forward." The betrayal hit me with such force that I felt the room tilt. My hands gripped the edge of the table to steady myself, but nothing could ground me from the humiliation flooding every inch of my being. The family, the friends, the colleagues, all complicit witnesses to my unraveling. Clarice leaned closer, her voice low enough for only me to hear. "Sign them, Lillian. Leave with what dignity you have left." My chest ached, But I refused to let them see me crumble. With trembling hands, I picked up the pen and signed the papers. The silence in the room deepened, broken only by the scratching of ink on paper. When I pushed the envelope back across the table, a wave of murmurs erupted. Some faces looked smug, others uneasy, but no one spoke up for me. Iris reached across the table, clutching my hand tightly. "You are stronger than this moment," she whispered, her eyes burning with quiet fury on my behalf. And then, just as Leonard was about to close the matter, Erica, my best friend, rose from her seat. She had been quiet all evening, her eyes darting between me and the rest of the table. Now her voice rang clear and sharp. "Before you celebrate this shameless spectacle, there's something you all should know." The room stilled. Erica's gaze shifted to me, softening for a moment before turning icy toward the family. "Lillian is pregnant. With your grandchild." A collective gasp tore through the room. The smug expressions drained from Clarice and Leonard's faces. Anthony froze, his mouth opening and closing like a man drowning. Marissa's hand dropped from her stomach, her smirk evaporating. "You what?" Anthony stammered, his face pale. Erica stood tall, her voice unwavering. "Yes, Anthony. Lillian is carrying your child. The same child you and your family were so quick to dismiss as impossible. You've humiliated her, discarded her, and all the while she carried the legacy you claimed she couldn't give." The room erupted into chaos. Guests whispered furiously, some staring at me with newfound awe, others glaring at the family for their cruelty. Clarice's face flushed red, her composure cracking as she sputtered. "This can't be true. She would have told us." I pushed my chair back slowly, my strength returning with every second of their unraveling. "I didn't tell you because I wanted to be sure," I said softly but firmly. "And because I knew this family would only value me if I gave you something in return. My worth has never been seen beyond the possibility of children. Tonight proved that." Anthony reached for me, desperation in his eyes now. "Lillian, we can fix this. We don't have to go through with this." I pulled my hand back before he could touch me. "You already did. You chose Marissa. You chose your parents' approval over your vows. And you handed me divorce papers on our anniversary." My voice shook but grew stronger as I continued. "You don't deserve me, and you certainly don't deserve this child." The silence that followed was deafening. Leonard's mouth worked soundlessly, Clarice's tears welled in her eyes, and Anthony looked broken in a way I had once feared to see. But instead of sorrow, I felt only release. I gathered my purse, lifted my chin, and turned toward the door. Erica followed close behind, her arm protective around me. Iris whispered a blessing as I passed, her words like a balm to my wounded soul. I didn't look back, not even once, because the moment I stepped outside that house, I knew there was nothing left for me within those walls of betrayal. The cool night air hit my face, washing away the suffocation of the room. For the first time in months, maybe years, I could breathe. And though I carried the weight of heartbreak inside me, I also carried something far stronger. The beginning of my own freedom. The night after I walked out of that house, I lay awake in my childhood bedroom at my mother's home, my body trembling from the weight of everything I had endured. Yet somewhere in the silence, I realized I had crossed an invisible line. They had expected me to break, to beg, to crawl back into their arms for forgiveness. Instead, I had walked away, and the simple act of leaving felt like the first strike of revenge. My mother, Helena, welcomed me with open arms, her embrace warm and steady. She didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations. She just let me rest my head on her lap like a child, stroking my hair while I cried out the poison that had been festering inside me. "You're not alone, my daughter," she whispered. "This child will be surrounded by love. You have me. You have Erica. You'll never lack what matters." Her words anchored me. For the first time in months, I felt seen without conditions. In the weeks that followed, I began piecing myself back together. Erica never left my side. She drove me to doctor's appointments, brought me meals when my morning sickness overwhelmed me, and made me laugh when despair tried to swallow me. Each time she touched my growing belly, she reminded me of the life I carried, the life that proved their insults wrong. But my in-laws didn't stay silent for long. Leonard called first, his voice unusually soft. Lillian, you must understand we were misled. Anthony made mistakes, yes, but we can fix this. Come back home. We'll annul the divorce. You'll be welcomed again. I listened, silent, as he stumbled through his carefully chosen words. When he paused, waiting for my reply, I finally said, "You didn't want me until you wanted an heir. My child is not your ticket to pride or legacy. Don't call again." Then I hung up, my hand steady for the first time in dealing with him. Anthony followed days later, showing up outside my mother's gate, disheveled and desperate. "Lillian, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "I made a mistake. I thought Marissa was what I needed, but she isn't you. And now that you're carrying our child." I cut him off, my anger sharp. "Our child? You humiliated me in front of your entire family, handed me divorce papers on our anniversary, and paraded your mistress in my face. Don't you dare claim this child as yours now. You made your choice." His eyes filled with tears, but I turned my back and walked inside, shutting the gate on the man who had once promised me forever. That was my revenge, not screaming, not plotting, but denying them access to the very thing they had tried to use against me. I carried my pregnancy with dignity, surrounding myself only with those who truly cared. My mother decorated the nursery with soft blues and creams, Erica painted stars on the ceiling, and Aunt Iris visited often with bags of food and gentle advice. Slowly, the hole inside me began to close, replaced by a fierce determination to give my baby the kind of love I had been denied. 9 months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. I named him Daniel, a name that meant God is my judge, because in the end, it wasn't Leonard, Clarice, or Anthony who had the right to decide my worth, it was me. As I held him in my arms, tiny fingers curling around mine, tears of joy streamed down my face. This child was not a bargaining chip, not a legacy to be flaunted, but a gift of pure love. News of Daniel's birth spread quickly. Leonard and Clarice sent flowers and gifts, each one returned unopened. Anthony wrote letters, pages filled with apologies and promises I no longer needed. I never responded. I had my envelope too, the one they hadn't expected. Their gift had been divorce papers meant to shatter me. Mine was silence, refusal, and the unshakable truth that they would never know my son. That was the envelope that left them speechless. As months turned into years, Daniel grew into a bright, joyful boy, his laughter filling every corner of our home. He called Erica Auntie, and clung to my mother's skirts with love only a grandchild could give. Together we built a family not bound by bloodlines and conditions, but by choice and unconditional devotion. Sometimes I would pass by the old streets where Anthony and I once walked hand in hand, and for a fleeting moment, I'd feel the sting of what could have been. But then Daniel's tiny hand would tug at mine, pulling me forward, and I would remember. I hadn't lost anything. I had been freed. And so I stood tall, not as a discarded wife but as a woman who had reclaimed her life. My revenge wasn't loud or violent, it was living fully, loving fiercely, and refusing to let betrayal define me. I had chosen myself, and in doing so, I had chosen the kind of life my son deserved.
Moral lesson.
Dear friends, as I close this story, I want to leave you with this. Sometimes revenge doesn't come in the form of shouting or destroying, it comes in choosing peace, in walking away, and in refusing to be defined by the cruelty of others. My in-laws believed they could strip me of dignity, but the truth is no one can take your worth unless you hand it over. I built a new life not by holding on to anger but by redirecting my energy into love. Love for my son, love for myself, and love for the people who stood by me when others turned away. That is the sweetest revenge, to thrive where others expected you to fall, to smile when they imagined you broken, and to create joy where they sowed despair. If you're listening to this, I hope you remember you are more than the roles others place on you. Your value is not tied to what you can give but to who you are. Stand firm, choose peace, and never let betrayal be the final word in your story. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below.